I was fixing my daughter-in-law's crashed computer when I stumbled upon photos of my dead son. But what made my blood run cold wasn't seeing Luke in those pictures. It was the timestamp taken last week, 2 months after we'd buried him. I sat there, hands trembling, asking myself, if Luke's alive, then who the hell did we put in that coffin? 3 days later, when I started following Christina, I witnessed something that would haunt me forever. A conversation that revealed the most chilling truth a father could ever discover about his own family. Before we dive into this incredible true story, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And tell me, would you have trusted those photos or dismissed them as a computer glitch? The afternoon sun slanted through Christina's kitchen window as I pulled into her driveway on Merriman Avenue. Christina Murphy, my daughter-in-law and Luke's widow, met me at the door wearing one of his old University of North Carolina sweatshirts. The sight still hit hard, even 2 months after we buried my son. "Thank you so much for coming, Dad," she said, her voice carrying that fragile quality it had developed since the funeral. "I'm hopeless with computers." I'd driven across Asheville to help, because that's what family does, especially when grief makes the simplest tasks feel impossible. Christina had been struggling since Luke's death, trying to manage insurance paperwork and settle his affairs while working through her own loss. The computer sat lifeless on Luke's old desk in what used to be his home office. "It crashed yesterday while I was organizing files," Christina explained, hovering nearby. "I'm terrified I've lost everything of his." 20 minutes later, I had the machine running again. Years of working cybercrime cases had taught me digital recovery skills that proved useful even in retirement. "Most everything looks intact," I told Christina, who was making coffee. "I'm running a program to recover any corrupted files." That's when I saw it. Buried deep in a complex folder structure was a directory labeled LM Safe. My heart skipped. LM Luke Murphy. I glanced toward the kitchen where Christina was still busy, then opened the folder. The world stopped. Dozens of photographs filled the screen. Luke, my son, my supposedly dead son, looking healthy and completely alive. In one photo, he sat on a cabin porch, reading sunlight across his face. Another showed him chopping firewood, sleeves rolled up, very much not dead. A third captured him at a small grocery store basket in hand, living his life. My hands trembled as I checked the timestamps. 8 days ago, 6 days ago, 4 days ago. All recent, all after we'd stood graveside and watched them lower his casket into North Carolina clay. "How's it coming?" Christina called. I quickly minimized the window, my mind spinning. "Almost done," I managed, though my voice sounded foreign. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Because if Luke was alive somewhere, living and breathing and buying groceries, then who the hell had we buried 2 months ago? The drive home felt endless, my mind churning with impossible questions. By the time I reached my small house on Sunset Drive, my hands were still unsteady. I sat in my driveway for 10 minutes, staring at nothing, trying to process what I'd seen. I needed to talk to someone. Someone who'd listen without judgment, who'd help me make sense of this madness. I called Jade. "Dad." My daughter's voice carried concern even through the phone. Jade Murphy Williams, 35 and sharp as her law degree, could read trouble in a single syllable. "Everything okay? I need to see you tonight. It's about Luke." The pause stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. "Dad, we've talked about this." The grief counselor said, "This is different, Jade. Please, can you meet me at Tupelo Honey downtown 8 o'clock? Another pause. "I'll be there." Tupelo Honey buzzed with the usual evening crowd, tourists and locals mixing over Southern comfort food. Jade was already waiting in a corner booth, her dark hair pulled back in the same no-nonsense style she'd worn since law school. She stood to hug me, and I caught the scent of her perfume, something expensive her husband Mark had probably bought her. "You sounded strange on the phone," she said as we settled across from each other. "What's going on?" I pulled out my phone, showing her the photos I'd managed to screenshot before leaving Christina's house. "I found these today on Christina's computer." Jade's expression shifted from concern to shock as she scrolled through the images. For a moment, hope flickered in her eyes, the same hope that had been tearing at my chest all evening. Then her lawyer brain kicked in. "Dad," she said, gently setting the phone down, "these could be old photos. Maybe the timestamps got corrupted when the computer crashed. Grief can make us see things that aren't really there. Look at the metadata." I insisted, leaning forward. "Look at the file properties. These were taken last week, Jade. Luke is alive. She studied the screen again, but I could see doubt creeping across her features. Dad, you've been through trauma. It's completely normal for your mind to... My mind is fine. The words came out sharper than I intended. I spent 30 years as a detective. I know how to read evidence. And I've spent 10 years as a lawyer, she countered. I know how desperate people can convince themselves of impossible things. Her voice softened. Maybe we should make an appointment with Dr. Richardson, just to talk through what you're feeling. The suggestion hit like a slap. You think I'm losing my mind. I think you're hurting. I think you miss Luke so much that you're grasping at anything that might bring him back. Jade reached across the table, but I pulled my hands away. Dad, I'm worried about you. This obsession isn't healthy. Obsession. I stood my chair, scraping against the hardwood floor. My son might be alive, and you want to medicate me into forgetting about it. Dad, please. But I was already walking away, leaving her sitting there with her rational explanations and her concern for my mental health. Outside, the mountain air felt thin and cold against my face. Fine. If my own daughter wouldn't believe me, I'd prove it myself. I'd find Luke, and then we'd see who was losing their mind. 3 decades of detective work had taught me that answers rarely came from asking questions. They came from watching, waiting, and letting people reveal themselves when they thought nobody was looking. I spent the next morning digging through my old equipment box in the garage. The digital recorder still worked, though the battery life wasn't what it used to be. The telephoto lens for my camera had gathered dust, but the optics were clean. My surveillance notebook, filled with techniques I'd refined over countless stakeouts, felt familiar in my hands. If Jade wanted proof, I'd give her proof. Christina's routine was predictable. Every morning at 9:15, she left her house in a silver Honda Civic, usually heading to the grocery store or pharmacy. Normal widow behavior. But on day 1, she drove straight to Sinclair Insurance on Patton Avenue. I parked across the street, adjusting my rearview mirror to keep the office entrance in view. 20 minutes later, Christina emerged with a man I didn't recognize, tall, early 40s, expensive suit. They stood close together on the sidewalk, their conversation animated. Too animated for a simple insurance consultation. The man was Garrett Sinclair, according to the nameplate visible through the office window. Day 2 brought the breakthrough I needed. Christina met Sinclair at High Five Coffee on Merriman, choosing a corner table near the back. I ordered a black coffee and settled 3 tables away, my digital recorder, tucked discreetly in my jacket pocket. The Luke policy is already processed, Sinclair said, keeping his voice low. 800,000 accidental death benefit included. Christina stirred her latte slowly. And the other one, Raymond's policy, 400,000. Took some convincing since he's 62, but his health records are solid. Sinclair leaned forward. You sure about this timeline? Luke's already dead, Christina replied, her voice carrying none of the grief I'd heard at her house. Now we just need Raymond to have his accident. My blood turned to ice. I fumbled with the recorder, making sure it was still running. Day 3 confirmed my worst fears. They met at Grove Park Inn's restaurant, thinking the upscale location would provide privacy. I sat at the bar, nursing a beer. I couldn't taste the recorder, capturing every damning word. It has to look natural, Garrett emphasized. Car accident would be cleanest. Maybe he falls asleep at the wheel drives off one of these mountain curves. Christina nodded. He's been distracted lately, grief-stricken. People will understand. What about the daughter, the lawyer? Jade won't be a problem. She already thinks he's losing his mind. Christina's laugh was cold, calculating. She'll probably thank us for putting him out of his misery. I gripped my beer glass so hard I thought it might shatter. So we're clear, Garrett said. Once Raymond's gone, you collect both policies. 1.2 million total. Minus your cut, Christina reminded him. Of course, 50-50 split as agreed. Christina raised her wine glass. To profitable partnerships. They clinked glasses, sealing their plan to murder me for money. I sat frozen at that bar for another 10 minutes after they left, the weight of their conspiracy crushing down on me. Christina hadn't just been deceiving us about Luke's death. She'd been planning mine from the beginning. My phone buzzed with a text from Christina. Thanks again for fixing my computer, Dad. You're such a blessing to this family. The hypocrisy made me physically sick. I had to find Luke immediately. Because if Christina discovered I knew the truth, I might not live long enough to expose her. The mountain roads twisted through early morning mist as I climbed toward the Blue Ridge peaks, matching photo details to memories of our old family cabin. The gravel driveway forced me to hike the final quarter mile through dense forest, each step bringing back summers when Luke was young. The sound of an axe echoed through the trees ahead. I emerged into the clearing and my heart stopped. There, splitting firewood beside the cabin, was my son. Not a ghost or hallucination, but Luke Murphy, alive, healthy, real. He looked up, and the axe slipped from his hands, clattering to the ground. "Dad," the word came out strangled, disbelieving. How could you possibly... For a moment we just stared at each other across 20 feet of mountain air. Then something broke inside both of us. Luke stumbled forward, and I ran to meet him, 34 years of fatherhood exploding in my chest as I wrapped my arms around him. He was solid, warm breathing. My son, who I'd watched them lower into the ground, was alive in my arms. Jesus, Luke. I couldn't stop the sob that tore from my throat. We buried you. I threw dirt on your coffin. I know. He was crying too, holding me so tight I could barely breathe. God, Dad, I never thought anyone would find me. How did you figure it out? Your photos. I managed between ragged breaths. Christina's computer had dozens of them. Recent ones. Luke pulled back his face, cycling through shock, confusion, then something close to panic. Photos! What photos Christina doesn't have? He stopped running, shaking hands through his hair. She said she deleted everything for security. The pieces clicked. She's been documenting where you are, son. No, that's not. She wouldn't. But doubt flickered in his eyes. We moved to the porch where Luke told me everything. The money laundering for a Charlotte cartel, his cooperation with the FBI, death threats against the whole family, and Christina's plan to fake his death using her book club friend, Dr. Karen Mitchell. She saved us all, Dad, Luke insisted, but his voice lacked its earlier certainty. When the cartel threatened you and Jade, Christina risked everything. She arranged the fake death certificate, the body from the morgue, everything. My chest felt like it was caving in. Luke had no idea his savior was planning to murder us both for insurance money. She visits every few days, he continued. Brings supplies, updates me on the FBI investigation. She's keeping everyone safe, while I hide until they arrest the cartel leaders. The faith in his voice was heartbreaking. Luke, I need to tell you something about Christina. What? He leaned forward, concerned. Is she okay? Has something happened? How could I destroy everything he believed? How could I tell him the woman he trusted with his life was planning to take it? Dad, you're scaring me. What's wrong? I looked at my son, my living, breathing son, who'd trusted his wife to protect his family, and realized I was about to shatter his world all over again. But this time the truth might be the only thing that could save us both. The afternoon light was fading when I finally found the words. Luke sat across from me on the cabin's weathered porch, completely unaware that I was about to destroy everything he believed about his marriage. Son, there's something else you need to know about Christina. His face brightened. Is she okay? When can I see her? The hope in his voice made this harder. Luke, I've been watching her for the past 3 days. Watching her? His brow furrowed. Dad, what are you talking about? I pulled out my phone, showing him the photos I'd taken outside Sinclair Insurance. She's been meeting with this man? Garrett Sinclair. Luke studied the images, confusion replacing concern. Okay, so maybe she's handling more insurance paperwork. Look at this one. I swiped to the photo of Christina and Garrett kissing outside High Five Coffee. Luke's face went white, then flushed red. That's not... There has to be an explanation. His voice cracked. Dad, Christina sacrificed everything for me. She wouldn't... I recorded their conversations. No. Luke stood abruptly, pacing to the porch railing. I don't want to hear this. Christina loves me. She saved my life. She took out life insurance policies on both of us, Luke. $800,000 on you. $400,000 on me. That's normal. Luke spun around, desperation creeping into his voice. Married couples have life insurance. That doesn't mean they're planning to kill me, son. The words hung in the mountain air like smoke. Luke stared at me, his mouth working soundlessly. Listen to this. I opened the audio file from Grove Park Inn, the one that had made me physically sick to record. Christina's voice filled the silence. Luke's already dead. Now we just need Raymond to have his accident. Luke's knees buckled. He gripped the porch railing, his face draining of all color. Garrett's voice followed. Car accident would be cleanest. Maybe he falls asleep at the wheel drives off one of these mountain curves. Stop, Luke whispered. But Christina's laugh came through the speaker, cold and calculating. Jade won't be a problem. She already thinks he's losing his mind. She'll probably thank us for putting him out of his misery. Luke made a sound like he'd been punched in the stomach. The recording continued. So we're clear. Once Raymond's gone, you collect both policies, 1.2 million total. Minus your cut, Christina's voice reminded Garrett. Of course, 50-50 split, as agreed. The sound of glasses clinking came through clearly, followed by Christina, to profitable partnerships. I stopped the recording. Luke had sunk to his knees on the porch, his whole body shaking. She never loved me, he said, the words barely audible. 2 months. 2 months I've been hiding up here, thinking she was protecting me, thinking she was risking everything for our family. His voice broke completely. I was just a paycheck to her. We both were. I moved to kneel beside him, putting my hand on his shoulder. Luke, she watched me, grieve for my own life. He continued, tears streaming down his face. She held me while I cried about leaving you and Jade behind. And the whole time she was planning to murder you for money. The mountain silence pressed around us as my son fell apart, everything he'd believed about his marriage crumbling to dust. Dad, Luke looked up at me with haunted eyes. If she finds out you discovered the truth? We both understood. Christina had already proven she was willing to kill for money. If she realized we knew about her plan, she wouldn't wait for a convenient accident. She'd come for us both, and she'd come soon. The temperature dropped with the sun, and Luke built a fire while we planned our next move. For the first time in months, we were truly father and son again, united by truth instead of separated by lies. We need to get this evidence to the police, Luke said, poking at the logs. The recordings, everything. Agreed. But Christina's dangerous now. Cornered animals do unpredictable things. I checked my phone, 2 bars of signal, barely enough. We spent an hour organizing our evidence, copying files to multiple devices. As we worked, I felt something I hadn't experienced since before Luke's fake funeral hope. That's when we heard the car engine. Luke and I froze, listening to the sound grow closer up the mountain road. No one else knew about this cabin. No one except Christina, Luke whispered. I moved to the window, peering through the curtains. Headlights swept through the trees, then went dark. 2 car doors slammed. She's not alone, I reported quietly. In the moonlight, we could see Christina walking toward the cabin with a tall man in dark clothing. Something metallic glinted in his hand. My phone buzzed. Luke, honey, I know you're in there. We need to talk. I quickly typed to Jade, Murphy family cabin, Blue Ridge. Danger. Call police now. Armed intruders. Response, Dad, what's happening? Just call 911, hurry. Christina's voice carried through the mountain air. Luke, I know Dad found you. Just come outside so we can discuss this like adults. The man beside her shifted, and I caught a better look at the gun. Professional. She hired a real killer, I told Luke. We moved quickly, pushing the heavy table against the front door, dragging the couch to block the back entrance. The cabin's thick walls would provide some protection, but we were trapped. Christina's voice grew impatient. Luke Murphy, I'm done playing games. You have something that belongs to me. What could we possibly have? Luke called out. Your life insurance policy for starters. Do you have any idea how much money you've cost me by staying alive? The casual cruelty made my skin crawl. This was the woman Luke had loved. I know you can hear me. Raymond, Christina continued, very clever for an old man taking pictures and making recordings. The hired gun moved closer, testing the windows. Here's what's going to happen, Christina announced. You're both coming outside, and Marcus here will make this quick. Or we can do this the hard way. I checked my phone. No response from Jade yet. How long would it take police to reach us? 20 minutes, 30. I know you're scared, Christina called out, her voice taking on fake sweetness. But fighting will only make things worse. I promise it'll be over fast. Luke looked at me with haunted eyes. She really means to kill us both. Yeah, I said, gripping the fireplace poker. But we're not going down easy. Christina's patience snapped. Fine. Have it your way. Marcus, get them out of there. I don't care how messy it gets. The sound of splintering wood came from the back door as Marcus began his assault on our barricade. The back door exploded inward, sending splinters across the cabin floor. Marcus stepped through the wreckage gun, raised his eyes, scanning for targets. Move. I grabbed Luke's arm, pulling him toward the front window. 30 years of police work had taught me that when you're outgunned, you change the battlefield. We crashed through the glass in a shower of shards rolling onto the porch as gunfire erupted behind us. Marcus's bullets splintered the window frame where we'd been standing seconds before. The creek, I whispered to Luke. Stay low. We sprinted into the darkness, using trees for cover as more shots rang out. I knew these woods from childhood camping trips, every deer trail, every rocky outcrop. Marcus might have professional training, but this was my territory. You can't run forever. Christina's voice echoed through the forest. You ruined everything that money was supposed to be mine. Her rage was raw, unfiltered. The mask had finally come off completely. We reached the creek bed, using the sound of running water to mask our movement. Luke was breathing hard, but keeping pace. Then I heard him gasp. Dad, I'm hit. Blood seeped through his jacket sleeve. The bullet had grazed his arm, painful but not life-threatening. Can you keep moving? Yeah, he said through gritted teeth. Just don't let me slow you down. Marcus was closing in his flashlight beam, sweeping through the trees. We pressed ourselves against a fallen log, hardly daring to breathe. I know you're out there, old man, Marcus called. Make this easy on yourself. Come out now and I'll make it quick. That's when I saw them flashlight beams cutting through the forest from the opposite direction. Multiple lights moving in formation. Police. This is Buncombe County Sheriff's Department. A voice boomed through a megaphone. Drop your weapons and show your hands. Marcus spun toward the new threat, his gun swinging away from our position. It was the opening I needed. I tackled him from behind, 30 years of arresting suspects, giving me the muscle memory to pin his gun arm. We struggled in the dirt, but Marcos was younger, stronger. Then Luke was there using a fallen branch to knock the gun from Marcus's grip. Father and son fighting together. The police lights flooded the clearing as officers surrounded us. Christina stood frozen in the spotlight, her face a mask of fury and desperation. Christina Murphy, you're under arrest. Detective Sarah Morrison announced, stepping forward with handcuffs. This is insane, Christina screamed. They're the criminals. They faked Luke's death. We have recordings of you planning murder for insurance money, Morrison replied calmly. Your own voice discussing how to kill both men. Christina's composure finally shattered completely. Yes, I wanted them dead. Do you know how much money that is? $1.2 million? I deserve that money more than anyone. The words hung in the mountain air like a confession written in stone. As they cuffed her, Christina turned to Luke with pure venom in her eyes. You were supposed to stay dead, you worthless piece of shit. Everything would have been perfect if you just stayed buried. Luke flinched as if she'd slapped him. Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent. Morrison continued, but Christina was beyond listening. I earned that money, she shrieked as they led her toward the patrol cars. 2 years of marriage to that boring accountant I earned every damn penny. Marcus was already secured in another vehicle, his professional calm, never wavering, even in defeat. As the red and blue lights faded down the mountain road, Luke and I stood in the sudden quiet of the forest. My son was alive. Christina was in custody, and we had survived. But watching those taillights disappear, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much longer fight for justice. 3 months later, I sat in the front row of the Buncombe County Courthouse, watching Christina Murphy face the consequences of her greed. She looked smaller, somehow diminished in her orange jumpsuit. Nothing like the manipulative woman who'd nearly destroyed my family. Judge Patricia Whitmore had heard 3 days of testimony. The evidence was overwhelming my surveillance recordings, the insurance policy's financial records showing Christina and Garrett's planning. Even Marcus, the hired killer, had cooperated with prosecutors in exchange for avoiding the death penalty. The defendant showed calculated premeditation. Judge Whitmore stated, her voice echoing through the packed courtroom. She orchestrated an elaborate scheme to defraud insurance companies and commit multiple murders for financial gain. Luke sat beside me, his arm still in a sling from that night in the mountains. Jade was on my other side, her hand resting on my shoulder, a gesture of support that meant everything after months of doubt between us. Christina Murphy, you are hereby sentenced to 25 years in state prison without possibility of parole for 15 years. Christina's face crumpled, but I felt no satisfaction. Only relief that she could never hurt anyone again. Garrett Sinclair received 15 years for conspiracy and accessory to attempted murder. Marcus got life without parole. Justice finally served. But the most important moment came when Judge Whitmore addressed Luke directly. Mr. Murphy, based on testimony from FBI agents regarding your cooperation in the takedown of the Charlotte drug cartel, and given the extraordinary circumstances that led to your faked death, this court officially declares you legally alive and restores your full civil status. Luke squeezed my hand as those words made his resurrection official. Outside the courthouse, FBI agent Coleman briefed us on the cartel investigation. Your testimony helped us arrest 17 members of the organization, he told Luke. The threat against your family has been completely eliminated. For the first time in almost a year, Luke could live openly under his own name. That evening we gathered at my house on Sunset Drive, the same kitchen where this nightmare had begun when I'd first seen those impossible photographs. Jade had prepared Luke's favorite meal pot roast with mashed potatoes, the same recipe her mother had used. "Sssss, Dad," Jade said quietly as we cleaned dishes together. "I owe you an enormous apology. When you came to me with those photos, I should have listened. I should have trusted your instincts. You were protecting me," I replied. "You thought I was falling apart after losing Luke. Any good daughter would have reacted the same way. But you weren't falling apart. You were solving a case." She dried a plate slowly, not meeting my eyes. "I forgot that you spent 30 years being right about these things." Luke joined us in the kitchen, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him since before this whole ordeal began. "The FBI says the cartel members who threatened us are all in federal prison now. Maximum security. We're really safe." "And Christina?" I asked. 25 years minimum. She'll be an old woman before she sees freedom again." Luke's voice carried no sympathy. "If she ever does." As the evening wound down, Luke pulled me aside on the back porch, where we'd had countless father-son conversations over the years. "Dad, I need you to know something." His voice was thick with emotion. "Thank you for never giving up on me. When everyone else thought you were losing your mind, you kept digging for the truth. You saved my life." I hugged my son, my living, breathing son, and felt 34 years of fatherhood crystallize into gratitude. "That's what fathers do," I said simply. "We never stop fighting for our children." The mountain air was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of autumn leaves. Somewhere in the distance I could hear Jade laughing at something on her phone, probably sharing updates with her husband Mark. My family was whole again. The truth had won. And for the first time since I'd found those photographs on Christina's computer, I could finally breathe easy. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight we were simply the Murphy family, together and safe. 6 months after the trial, I stood in my kitchen making Sunday dinner, watching Luke help Jade set the table through the window. The same kitchen where I'd first discovered those impossible photographs, now filled with the sounds of a family rebuilt stronger than before. Luke had found work with Henderson and Associates, a respected accounting firm in downtown Asheville that specialized in legitimate businesses, no more shadowy clients or questionable transactions. He'd rented a small apartment just 10 minutes from my house, close enough for our weekly dinners and impromptu fishing trips to the French Broad River. "Dad, you need to see this." Jade called from the living room, waving a newspaper. She'd been promoted to senior partner at her law firm, developing a specialty in insurance fraud cases. The Murphy case, as the media had dubbed it, had made her something of an expert in the field. The article featured a photo of the three of us outside the courthouse with a headline reading, "Retired Detective's Investigation Exposes $1 Million Insurance Scheme." Below it, a smaller story mentioned my upcoming book, "When Truth Matters More Than Doubt." Luke read the title aloud. "Dad, I still can't believe you're writing a memoir. Someone needs to warn other families about these scams," I replied, stirring the gravy. "If my story helps one person trust their instincts instead of dismissing them as grief or age, it's worth it." The book had become my mission, a way to turn our nightmare into something useful. Publishers were interested, and I'd already heard from 3 families who'd recognized similar patterns in their own situations after reading early excerpts. Mark arrived with their 2 kids, filling the house with the chaos of a real family gathering. As we sat around the dinner table, the same table where Luke used to do homework, where Jade had announced her engagement, I marveled at how much had changed. "Remember when you thought I was losing my mind?" I asked Jade, passing the mashed potatoes. She laughed, but her eyes grew serious. "I remember thinking grief had broken you. I was so wrong, Dad. You weren't falling apart. You were putting pieces together that the rest of us couldn't even see. The important thing is we learned from it," Luke added. "We're closer now than we've ever been." It was true. Our weekly dinners had become sacred, a time when phones went silent and we simply talked. Really talked about everything from Luke's new cases to Jade's courtroom victories to my progress on the book. "You know what I've learned?" I said, looking around the table at faces I'd almost lost forever. "Age isn't a limitation, it's an advantage. 30 years of experience taught me to see patterns others missed. 62 years of living taught me that family is worth fighting for, no matter how impossible the fight seems." Luke raised his glass of sweet tea. "To Dad, who proved that determination and love can overcome any deception. To family," Jade added, "and to never giving up on each other. As the evening wound down and everyone headed home, Luke lingered on the front porch where we'd had so many conversations over the years. "Dad, I need you to know something," he said quietly. "That night in the mountains when Christina was screaming about money and Marcus had his gun pointed at us, I wasn't scared of dying. I was scared of leaving things unsaid between us." I put my hand on his shoulder. "Nothing's unsaid now, son." "No," he agreed. "Nothing's unsaid." After everyone left, I sat in my study working on the final chapter of the book. The cursor blinked on the screen as I tried to find the right words to end our story. Finally, I typed, "Age is just a number. Experience, love, and determination are everything. When someone you care about is in danger, when the truth seems impossible but your gut tells you otherwise, when everyone around you says you're wrong, trust yourself. Fight for what matters. Never give up." I paused, then added one final paragraph. "I found my son because I refused to accept that the impossible was impossible. I saved my family because love made me stubborn and experience made me smart. Now I ask you, if you were in my place, if everyone doubted you, but you knew the truth in your bones, what would you do? Would you give up or would you fight?" The story was complete, but the question remained hanging in the air like a challenge to anyone who might face their own impossible truth someday. Looking back on everything that happened, I realized this true story taught me lessons I never expected to learn at 62. When I first found those photographs on Christina's computer, I could have easily dismissed them as technical glitches or old files. Thank God I didn't. My advice? Don't be like I almost was. Don't let others convince you that age makes you unreliable. When Jade suggested I needed psychological help, I nearly believed her. Society tells us that older people lose their edge, that grief clouds our judgment. But sometimes God gives us wisdom precisely because we've lived long enough to recognize patterns others miss. These grandpa stories we carry aren't just memories, they're survival tools. Every case I'd worked, every instinct I'd developed, every moment of doubt I'd pushed through in 30 years of detective work prepared me for this moment. This wasn't just another true story about family drama. It was about trusting the voice inside that says, something's wrong here. The hardest lesson: Christina had fooled everyone, including Luke. She played the grieving widow perfectly while planning to murder us both. But God has a way of exposing truth through the most unexpected channels. A crashed computer, a hidden folder, a father's stubborn love. If you're watching this and thinking about your own family, remember, never dismiss your instincts because others call them paranoia. Age brings clarity, not confusion. Experience teaches us to see what younger eyes miss. And sometimes what looks like the end of a true story is actually just the beginning of justice. The Murphy family survived because one person refused to give up. In your own grandpa stories, in your own moments of doubt, remember that persistence and faith can move mountains and expose killers. What would you have done in my situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories that prove truth really is stranger than fiction.